The conversation ends. You walk away. Your hands tremble, not from cold, not from anger, from something you can't name. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't strike you. They didn't even use language you could point to as clearly abusive. Yet you feel gutted, emptied, as if something essential was extracted while you were occupied trying to remain civil. You repeat their words in your mind. I was only kidding. You take things too seriously. I'm telling you this for your own good. The phrasing sounds like care. It sounds like concern, but it registers in your system like toxin. You've encountered them before. The colleague who grins while undermining your contributions. The romantic partner who rewrites your memory until you doubt your own perception. The family member who deploys guilt with surgical precision. Silent, invisible, lethal. These are the engineers of disorder. And the reason you're defeated by them is uncomplicated. You're operating under the framework of decency. They're operating under the framework of combat. You're attempting to apply compassion to solve a dominance contest. You're carrying vulnerability to an armed conflict. And while you continue this approach, you will remain their resource. You will remain the energy source they drain to sustain their sense of significance. But consider an alternative. What if you stopped? What if you abandoned the pursuit of being good and started pursuing being effective? What if you could meet a narcissist's gaze and watch them retreat? What if you could neutralize a manipulator without uttering a syllable? What if you could reverse their own tactics so that each attempt to damage you only damages them? This isn't about becoming malicious. This isn't about transformation into what they are. This is about comprehending the architecture of power. 5 centuries ago, a strategist named Niccolo Machiavelli authored a brief text that disturbed the world. He didn't document how society should function. He documented how it actually functions. He stripped away the comfortable fictions of civilization and revealed the brutal mechanisms of human nature. He taught that being feared is superior to being loved, when both cannot coexist. He taught that whoever controls the story controls the truth. Today we're applying Machiavelli's ruthless framework to contemporary toxic environments. We're dismantling the manipulator's tactical manual, page by page. I'm handing you 7 psychological instruments. They're substantial, they're sharp, they're hazardous. Most people will never deploy them. They're too terrified of appearing heartless. They're dependent on moral superiority, even while being destroyed from the inferior position. But you're here because you're finished hemorrhaging. By this video's end, you won't merely survive toxic individuals. You'll confuse them. You'll shatter their influence over you. You'll become what Machiavelli termed the prince, sovereign, strategic, and unreachable. But understand this. Once you perceive the game, you cannot unperceive it. And once you learn to execute it, you might discover you appreciate the quietness that follows triumph. Let's begin. Before defeating the adversary, you must comprehend what you're actually confronting. You believe you're dealing with a person. You're not. You're dealing with a behavioral pattern, a defect in human programming that confuses control with connection. Machiavelli wrote this about human nature in general, that people are ungrateful, inconsistent, pretenders and deceivers, danger avoiders and profit seekers. It sounds pessimistic. It sounds harsh. But if you're facing a toxic individual, it's simply an accurate description of your reality. Your primary error is projection. You project your own internal conscience onto them. You think if I articulate how much damage this causes, they'll cease. If I demonstrate kindness, they'll mirror it. You assume they operate on the same internal system as you. They don't. A toxic individual doesn't perceive interaction as value exchange. They perceive it as resource extraction. your attention, your emotional response, your self-worth. These are the resources. When you explain yourself, you're not constructing understanding. You're providing weapons. When you display anger, you're not establishing boundaries. You're providing fuel. They're addicted to significance, and nothing generates more significance than possessing the power to destroy your equilibrium with a single phrase. Machiavelli understood that humans are propelled by two fundamental forces, fear and self-interest. The toxic person is propelled by a profound, hollow terror of insignificance. They fill that emptiness by controlling you. To defeat them, you must abandon trying to heal them. You must abandon trying to rescue them. Machiavelli advised leaders to perceive the world as it exists, not as they wish it existed. He who neglects what is done for what ought to be done brings about his destruction rather than his preservation. If you continue treating a serpent like a companion animal, don't be shocked when you're bitten. The transformation begins here, immediately. You must terminate the accommodating version inside you. That fragment of you craving universal harmony. That fragment of you seeking approval. That fragment is a vulnerability. It's the mechanism they use to access you. You must replace that approval-seeking need with strategic necessity. The contest isn't about correctness. The contest is about self-mastery. The instant you lose composure, you lose the exchange. The instant you weep, you lose the exchange. The instant you over-explain, you hand them victory. So how do we reclaim power? We begin by becoming absence itself. Machiavelli stated everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you truly are. The toxic person depends on reading you. They require knowledge of your triggers. They require knowledge of your insecurities. They probe you to locate where you hemorrhage. If they know you're insecure about your intelligence, they'll construct subtle mockery about your work. If they know you fear abandonment, they'll weaponize withdrawal. They're mapping your internal landscape. Your defense is becoming unmappable. In contemporary psychology, this is labeled the gray rock technique, but we're advancing it further. We're applying Machiavellian silence. When they provoke you, your instinct is defending, correcting the narrative, saying that's not what occurred. Don't. Instead, offer them nothing. When they insult you, observe them with absolute flat neutrality. Blink once, then return to your activity. When they attempt guilt manipulation, state, "I understand you perceive it that way." Then cease talking. This isn't passive. This is aggressive silence. You're creating vacuum. Toxic people depend on friction. They require your pushback so they can push harder. It's physics. If you lean against a structure and the structure vanishes, you collapse forward. Be the structure that vanishes. Let's examine a scenario. A colleague, we'll call him David, states in a meeting, "Well, I suppose some of us have leisure to depart early, while the rest of us complete the actual work." He wants you to react. He wants you to state, "I remained late 3 times this week." He wants you to appear defensive before the supervisor. The Machiavellian action. You observe David. You pause for 3 seconds. The silence extends. It becomes uncomfortable for him, not you. Then you state calmly, "Interesting observation, David." And you rotate back to the supervisor and continue your presentation. What just occurred? You denied him fuel. You made his comment appear petty and diminished because you didn't dignify it with reaction. You signal to the room that he's beneath your acknowledgement. This is therapeutic indifference. It damages them more than any insult could, because an insult implies they matter enough to disturb you. Indifference implies they don't exist. Machiavelli taught that if you cannot destroy an adversary, you should not irritate them. Minor conflicts are irritations. Indifference is destruction. It demands discipline. It demands you suppress your ego in the instant so you can triumph in the extended campaign. You must become a mirror that reflects nothing except their own conduct back at them. When a narcissist stares into emptiness, they panic. They amplify the tactics. They intensify. They become crueler. This is the extinction burst. It's the tantrum a child produces when the parent ceases yielding. When this occurs, do not fracture. This is the indication you're succeeding. They're escalating because their control mechanism is malfunctioning. They're pressing buttons and nothing is responding. Remain in the void. You're training them. You're conditioning them like behavioral psychology. You're teaching them that their toxicity produces zero reward. Eventually, they will migrate to an easier target, because predators are efficiency-driven. They want accessible prey. If you're stone, they cannot consume you. Information is power. In the hands of a healthy individual, intimacy is connection. In the hands of a toxic individual, intimacy is leverage. Every secret you disclose, every fear you confess, every complaint you express about your supervisor or your partner, it's all archived. It's all ammunition awaiting the optimal moment. Machiavelli advised leaders to maintain their own counsel. A wise prince should never permit his thoughts to be known. You must master the art of strategic ambiguity. Cease broadcasting your existence. In the era of social media, we're conditioned to overshare. We publish our victories, our defeats, our mental health challenges. We believe we're being authentic. But to a manipulator, your authenticity is a blueprint of your vulnerabilities. If you publish that you're experiencing loneliness, the love bomber knows precisely when to approach. If you inform your toxic mother that you're struggling financially, she knows precisely how to purchase your compliance. You must become fog. When they inquire, "How are you?" do not provide the genuine answer. Provide the standard answer. "I'm good, occupied. You know how it is." Be polite. Be pleasant. But be vague. This drives the control addict insane. They cannot control what they don't know. If you're planning to exit a toxic employment, inform no one. If you're initiating a side enterprise, inform no one. If you're experiencing relationship difficulty, do not inform the toxic friend who claims to be a supportive listener. Machiavelli stated, "He who desires to deceive will always locate someone who will permit himself to be deceived." Toxic people are professional data extractors. They extract you for information to distort later. "I thought you stated you hated that restaurant," they'll state 6 months later, attempting to make you appear inconsistent before a group. "I thought you stated you were broke," they'll state when you purchase yourself new shoes, attempting to induce guilt. If you provide them nothing, they possess nothing to distort. This is difficult. It feels like you're being secretive. You are. But secrecy is a form of protection. In nature, camouflage is not cowardice. It's survival. You're blending in. You're appearing normal, boring, unremarkable. This is the gray man theory applied to psychology. If you're boring, they acquire no drama. If you're vague, they acquire no leverage. If you're unpredictable because they don't know your plans, they cannot sabotage you. Imagine you're playing cards. You don't reveal your hand to the person who's been cheating all evening. You hold your cards against your chest. They will attempt to pry you open. "You're being so quiet recently. You never inform me of anything anymore. I feel like we're drifting apart." Recognize this for what it is. It's a baiting operation. They're fishing for reaction. They want you to state, "No, I'm not. I just," and then spill everything. Don't bite. Response: "Really? I've just been concentrated on work. So how is your new car?" Deflect. Pivot. Maintain the spotlight on them. Toxic people love discussing themselves. Permit them. While they talk, you study. While they talk, you're safe. You're gathering intelligence. They're revealing their hand. You're keeping yours concealed. That is the asymmetry of power. There's a concept in martial arts termed Judo. In Judo, you don't resist the opponent's force. You utilize their momentum against them. If they push you, you pull them. If they pull you, you push them. You can execute this verbally. Machiavelli knew that ego is the weakness of every tyrant. When a toxic person attacks you, they expect resistance. They expect you to state no. What occurs if you state yes? Not yes to their demands, but yes to their reality. This is termed fogging. Consider a toxic parent stating you're such a disappointment. You never visit. The resistance response. I visit constantly. I was there last week. You're never satisfied. Result. An hour-long conflict. They triumph. The Judo response. You're correct. I probably don't visit as frequently as you'd prefer. Then silence. Watch what occurs. You agreed with the truth of the statement from their perspective, but you accepted zero guilt. You didn't apologize. You didn't promise to change. You simply agreed. You're correct. Those two words are the ultimate conversation terminators for a toxic person. They're preparing for conflict. They have their defenses activated. They're ready in the arena. And you just removed your defenses and sat down. They have nowhere to direct that aggression. It bounces back and strikes them. Let's attempt another one. A manipulator states, you're acting crazy right now. Resistance. I'm not crazy. You're the one gaslighting me. Result. See, you're yelling. You are crazy. Trap activated. Judo response. I can see why you might think that. End of sentence. You're validating their perception without validating the fact. You're stating, I see your illusion. This is infuriating for them. They cannot fight agreement. It makes you slippery. It makes you impossible to capture. Machiavelli advised that a prince should appear to be whatever the people require him to be, while remaining faithful to his own objectives. You appear to be agreeing. You appear to be submissive. But in reality, you're terminating the interaction on your terms. You're preserving your energy. Every time you argue with a toxic person, you're leaking vitality. You're aging yourself. You're spiking your stress hormones. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to prove you're correct to someone who's committed to misunderstanding you? No. Provide them the victory so you can maintain the peace. You're correct. I'm terrible at loading the dishwasher. Then walk away and go appreciate your existence. Let them possess the dishwasher victory. You maintain your sanity. This requires massive reduction in ego. Your ego wants to scream. Your ego wants justice. But justice is rare. Peace is constructed. You must prioritize your peace over your pride. Machiavelli wrote, prudence consists in knowing how to distinguish the character of troubles and choosing to take the lesser evil. The lesser evil is permitting them to believe they won the argument. The greater evil is losing your soul, attempting to convince them. We've discussed presence, how to act when you're with them. Now let's discuss the most powerful weapon of all, absence. Machiavelli stated, absence diminishes mediocre passions and increases great ones. In the context of toxicity, absence is your shield and your sword. Supply and demand. If you're always available, you're cheap. If you're always there to be the punching bag, they will punch. You must create scarcity. This is not exclusively about no contact. Sometimes you cannot go no contact. Maybe it's a supervisor. Maybe it's a co-parent, but you can go low contact. You can go emotional absence. Cease answering the phone on the first ring. Cease replying to texts immediately. Cease attending every family gathering out of obligation. When you withdraw your presence, you disrupt their pattern. They're accustomed to you being a fixture in their reality. When the fixture moves, they become disoriented. Where have you been? They will demand. Why are you ignoring me? Response: I've just been incredibly occupied. How are you? Ambiguity plus absence. You're training them to understand that access to you is a privilege, not a right. And when they abuse that privilege, access is revoked. Imagine you're a fortress. The toxic person is a barbarian at the gate. For years, you've left the drawbridge lowered. They walk in, soil the carpets, steal the silver, and leave. And you stand there weeping, asking why they did it. Raise the drawbridge. They will scream from the other side of the moat. They will throw stones. They will inform everyone in the village that you're a cruel tyrant for locking them out. Permit them. You're safe inside. Machiavelli knew that to rule, one must be independent. If you're dependent on their approval, you're a subordinate. If you're dependent on their money, you're a servant. To defeat them, you must construct your own kingdom. Financial independence, emotional independence, social independence. The more you need them, the more they can damage you. The less you need them, the more you become a ghost they cannot capture. When you finally cease caring, truly cease caring about their opinion, their power evaporates. It's like waking from a nightmare. The monster was only terrifying because you were asleep. When you wake, you realize it was merely a shadow on the wall. Sometimes defense is insufficient. Sometimes the toxic person corners you. Sometimes they threaten what you love. And in those moments, you cannot be a ghost. You must become the lion. Machiavelli stated there are two methods to fight: by law and by force. The first is natural to humans, the second to beasts. But because the first is often insufficient, one must resort to the second. Sometimes you don't merely walk away. Sometimes you must ensure they can never follow you. Machiavelli wrote a line that's often quoted but rarely comprehended. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed, because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones, they cannot. This is the most dangerous lesson and the most necessary. Most people deal with toxic conduct in half measures. You snap back slightly. You make a passive-aggressive comment. You complain to human resources, but then minimize it. This is an error. When you inflict a light injury on a toxic person, when you just irritate them or embarrass them slightly, you don't stop them. You motivate them. You trigger their revenge mechanism. They will go home, obsess over it, and return with a larger plan to damage you. If you're going to fight, you must end the conflict. You don't fight to injure. You fight to neutralize. How do you crush a toxic person in the contemporary world? You don't use violence. You use the one thing they cannot survive: exposure. Toxic people operate in the shadows of social politeness. They depend on the fact that you won't create a scene. They depend on implied insults. Your move is to drag them into the light. The technique is termed the spotlight. When they make a derisive comment disguised as humor before others, do not laugh. Do not become angry. Stop everything. Observe them with clinical curiosity and inquire, "Can you explain what you meant by that?" Silence. They will attempt to brush it off. "Oh, I was just kidding. You're too sensitive." Do not permit them escape. Maintain the spotlight. "I understand you were joking, but I don't comprehend the punchline. Explain to me why that is humorous." Now the room is quiet. The tension is elevated. They're sweating. They must either admit they were being cruel or state something foolish that makes them appear incompetent. You've stripped away their camouflage. You've exposed the predator. This is a crushing blow because it destroys their social mask. A narcissist would rather be struck in the face than be humiliated publicly. Once you execute this effectively, once you demonstrate to them that you're willing to make things uncomfortable to protect your boundaries, they will recoil. They will label you as difficult, good. Difficult means hard to consume. You want to be difficult to digest. Another surgical strike is the documentation bomb. If you're dealing with a toxic supervisor or a manipulator in a legal context, do not argue with them verbally. They're superior liars than you. Switch to paper. Every conversation receives an email summary. Per our conversation, you stated X, Y, and Z. Please confirm. They will hate this. They will attempt to call you to avoid the paper trail. Do not answer. I'm in the middle of something. Send it in an email. When you present a collection of undeniable facts, you're not arguing. You're executing a checkmate. Machiavelli advised the prince to rely on his own arms, not the arms of others. Your arms are your records, your facts, your reality. Never threaten. Never state, "I'm going to report you." Empty threats signal weakness. Just act. File the report. Send the email. Make the statement. The blow must come from nowhere, and it must be decisive. When they realize you're not playing a game of emotions, but a game of consequences, they will retreat. The toxic person's favorite weapon when they lose control of you is the smear campaign. If they cannot control you, they will attempt to control how others perceive you. They will paint you as the villain, the unstable one, the abuser. This terrifies most people. We're social animals. The fear of being outcast is primal. Machiavelli addressed this. He stated that a prince must avoid being hated, but he must not care about being feared. However, the best fortress a prince can possess is the affection of his people. How do you counter a smear campaign? Not by defending yourself. If you run around attempting to disprove the lies, you appear guilty. You appear frantic. You counter it with consistency. You construct a reputation fortress. Be so undeniably competent, kind, and stable with everyone else that the toxic person's lies sound insane. If David informs everyone that you're an angry, unhinged lunatic, but every other person in the office experiences you as calm, helpful, and professional, David starts to appear like the liar. You're playing the extended game. The toxic person burns bridges. They exploit people. Eventually their mask slips with everyone. You just have to survive until it does. Do not badmouth them back. If someone approaches you and states, "Hey, David said you were difficult to work with," do not launch into a rant about David. That makes it a he said, she said. Instead, use the high road pivot. That's unfortunate he feels that way. I actually think David is very talented at X. I hope he's doing okay. This confuses the messenger. David is spitting poison. You're offering grace. Who appears like the problem? You're using contrast. Darkness is most visible when placed next to light. Be the light. Not because you're a saint, but because it's the most strategic method to expose their darkness. Machiavelli knew that perception is reality. If you control your conduct, you eventually control the public perception. Let the toxic person dig their own grave with their mouth. You just hand them the shovel by staying silent. It takes time. It takes patience. But the truth has a way of rising. Not because the universe is fair. It isn't. But because toxic people are addicted to chaos. Eventually, they will chaos themselves into a corner. You just have to be standing far enough away to not get struck by the debris. There comes a point where the only winning move is not to play. Machiavelli wrote about war, but he also wrote about conserving resources. There is no glory in fighting a battle that yields no profit. If a person drains your energy, stifles your growth, and brings you only misery, there is no strategy that will fix them. You cannot strategize a cancer into a healthy organ. You must cut it out. But you must do it correctly. Most people leave messily. They have a massive blowout fight. They separate and reunite 5 times. They leave the door cracked open just in case. This is not leaving. This is pausing the torture. The Machiavellian exit is total. It's cold, it's final, and it's silent. You do not announce your departure. You do not write an extended letter explaining your feelings. They don't care about your feelings. They only care that they're losing a possession. You simply cease to exist in their world. Block the number. Block the social media. Route the emails to trash. Change the locks. When you disappear without a word, you rob them of their closure. Toxic people need the last word. They need to feel like they won the separation, or that they're the victim of your cruelty. Silence gives them neither. It leaves them with a question mark that will haunt them for years. Why did they leave? Did they ever care? What are they doing now? And while they're haunted, you're building. The best revenge is not revenge. Revenge proves you're still thinking about them. The best revenge is apathy and ascension. Succeed, get fit, make money, find love that is gentle and safe. Do it for yourself, not to show them. But know that somewhere in the dark corners of the internet, they are watching. And nothing burns a toxic person more than seeing their victim thrive without them. It proves their deepest fear. They were not essential. You were the sun. They were just a cloud passing in front of it. Now the cloud is gone, and you are shining. Machiavelli stated, "It is not titles that honor individuals, but individuals that honor titles." It is not the relationship that defined you. It was you that gave value to the relationship. Take your value back. So where does this leave us? We've walked through the darkness. We've picked up the weapons of silence, ambiguity, and strategic aggression. Some of you might feel uncomfortable. Is this manipulation? Is this cold? Let me ask you a question. Is a surgeon cruel for cutting open a patient to remove a tumor? Is a soldier cruel for shooting a terrorist to save a hostage? You have been a hostage to your own empathy for too long. You have treated your kindness like a weakness, handing it out to people who use it as a weapon against you. Machiavelli wasn't a villain. He was a realist. He wanted to protect the state from chaos. You are the state. Your mind is the kingdom. When you adopt these strategies, you are not becoming a bad person. You are becoming a formidable person. There is a difference. A harmless person is not good. They are just helpless. A formidable person who chooses to be kind. That is true virtue. You are building a wall so that you can plant a garden behind it. Without the wall, the garden is trampled. Without the Machiavellian armor, your empathy is destroyed. By learning the dark, you protect the light. You are no longer a leaf blowing in the wind of other people's emotions. You are the wind. You are the architect of your own reality. When you walk into a room now, you see the strings, you see the games, and you smile. Not because you are playing, but because you know you don't have to. You have beaten them at their own game by transcending it. But freedom has a cost. I told you I would give you the tools, but I didn't tell you how heavy they are. When you see the truth about human nature, the envy, the greed, the manipulation, it can be lonely. You will lose friends who only liked you when you were weak. You will alienate family members who rely on your submission. You will stand apart. The air is thinner up here. But the view is clear. You are now awake, and you can never go back to sleep. The question is, what will you build now that you are free?